Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love, a love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service.
Good morning. I'm Don Dickey, a member of All Souls, and it's my privilege to welcome you here on the shortest day of the year, 23 hours. Whether you are here in the room or watching online, we are glad you're here. Your participation enriches us all and our time together. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation. Our tradition is a large tent with room for many beliefs and approaches to the questions that matter. It is our values of inclusion, compassion, and justice that hold us together. We seek to build the beloved community, making room for everyone and creating a world where everyone's needs are met. You may be new here this morning. Welcome. We know that your first time attending a church, you may want to keep a low profile and just check things out quietly. That's great. We are here, you are here. And if you are a visitor and excited to be here, and to let us all know that you are, I invite you now to raise your hand at this time. Do we have some new people? Ah, yes. Thank you. Thank you for enriching us all with your presence today. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. Saturday, March 29th, our annual All Souls auction is going to be held. So visit the table if you haven't already. You can arrange for gifts that you want to provide, a meal, and also even to sign up to help work. Worker bees are always welcome.
Worlds are on fire. Perhaps your corner of the world, or yours, or mine, sometimes sure, ours, more and more, the whole wide world ablaze. Fire or not, this is no time to shrink or shirk. While despair or grief may enter the room of your heart, it's not the only occupant there. There's more to you and more to us than that sticky residue of pain. Your heart keeps company with ancestors who lent you deep wisdom, abiding love, scientific curiosity, wellsprings of compassion, and humor when all else fails. It's time to connect, to feel the deep truth of no separation. It's time to thrive, though at times you doubt it's possible. This thing is our thing. This time is our time. It is to this moment each is called. All are called. Called to hope, or not. Called to resist, insist, persist. Called to hold back the flames. Everything is on fire, but all is not lost. It is good we gather together. Come, let us worship together.
May the flame of our chalice warm our hearts, that they may be open, ever larger, ever further into trust. Please stand as you are able and join in the affirmation of our covenant, then remain standing as we join together in song. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Could the children come forward? Or anybody that just wants to move around is invited. So I want to tell you a story, and I need your help everybody's help. So first of all, I just want to say that today we're talking about ancestors, people that came before us, people that lived here. They might have been part of our family or just part of our community, but they did some wonderful things that we get to have today. Like, I'm thinking they might have left some really beautiful buildings or built schools, or what are some other things that, good things that, yeah. That thing, that thing? I think they did. I think they bought that and put it here, the chrysalis. It's called a chrysalis, yeah. They made food, that's right. Yeah.
Somebody at my community garden is just with arrived at Christmas, and I arrived and I got I got close
I know that was good. Who else? Yes, I think you? Yes, very good. They grow crops to share with others. Food. They grow food. Yeah, they protected things like animals. But you know what? Does anybody else have an idea? Just call it out. Yeah? Oh, your grandmother had a big house for you. Any other ideas? One more. They did. They made things for us to live in. Now, let's think about something else, though. Sometimes, because they were people like we are, and sometimes we don't do everything right, sometimes the people that came before us did things that weren't so good that we have to fix now, maybe, and we have to live with now. So I'm thinking, well, maybe they built a really ugly building right in the middle of everything that now we have to do something with or not. Maybe, well, you tell me. They made rotten eggs? Okay, easy solution there. Yeah? Funny what? Funny water fountains. They did that all over here, didn't they? Yes. They might have built a house that could fall over. I was thinking sometimes that they made rules that kept people apart because they were different. Like different skin colors, right? Right? Yeah. They did. They killed some things. They made things that were unstable, for sure. They killed each other. Yeah, they made battles and wars. So when I tell this story, now you're going to help me tell this story. There's a part in the story that says, "Not my problem." It's about a queen that lived a long time ago who liked to say, "Not my problem." So when it's time, can you all yell out? That, yes. Okay, so, ready? Here's the story. So once upon a time, a queen sat on her balcony overlooking her, I don't know, what's her name? Queen what? Queen Mirabelle. Why not? Okay. And she sat there eating rice cakes on her balcony, looking over her land or her people, and rice cakes and honey with her chief advisor. So as they ate, they gazed down at all the busy streets. There were a lot of people there in the street, and the queen pointed to something as she was talking to her advisor, and as she did, a drop of honey from that rice cake landed on the balcony railing. My queen, the advisor, said, "You've spilled a drop of honey. Shall I call the housekeeper to come clean it up?" But the queen, she laughed. "A little drop of honey is..." Yep, someone will clean it up later. So they went on eating and talking as the drop of honey warmed in the sun. You know what honey does when it gets warm? Yeah, it started to drip, slowly dripping down the side of the railing until it landed in the street below with a big plop. And the advisor said, "Your Highness, that drop of honey has now fallen into the street where it's attracting flies. Shouldn't we call somebody to come clean it up?" But the queen, she yawned lazily and replied, "A little drop of honey and a few flies, that's..." Indeed, someone will deal with it later. And soon a lizard darted out from underneath the palace wall and began to catch the flies on its tongue. And then a cat sprang from the baker's shop and began to bat the lizard back and forth like a toy. Just then a dog charged out from the butcher's shop and began to bite the cat on the neck. "Your Highness," the advisor implored, "now the flies have attracted a lizard, which attracted a cat, which is now being attacked by a dog. Shouldn't we call someone to stop the fight?" But the queen only stretched, and she shook her head at her advisor and said, "Won't you relax? A silly animal fight is..." Someone will surely see to it. And in fact, the baker did see to it. She saw the dog attacking her cat, and she ran out with her rolling pin and she began hitting the dog. And then the butcher heard his howling dog, and he ran out with his broom and he began to hit the cat. So soon the butcher and the baker were hitting each other. Then the neighboring storekeepers began to take sides, joining in the fight. And so some soldiers heard the commotion and came along, but some of them knew the butcher and others knew the baker, so they took sides, and the battle grew. It grew and it grew until a great war raged in the streets. People were throwing rocks through the windows and tipping over the vendor carts. Someone picked up a torch and hurled it through a window, and inside the fire raged, and eventually the fire spread to the palace. The next thing they knew, the queen and her advisor were being escorted down a ladder from the balcony into the street below because the palace was in flames. And later that day, when the fire had died out, the queen and her advisor surveyed the ruins of their country. And suddenly the queen stopped in the middle of the street underneath where her balcony had been. And she reached down and she touched something in a small puddle on the ground. You know what it was? Honey, yes. She remembered. She said, "I guess I should have cleaned up that drop of honey, but it dripped from the balcony in the first place. Now my whole kingdom has been lost because of it." And that was the last time the queen ever said. Thank you. Thank you for helping me with the story. So now we'll sing the kids out to their classes.
When my son Sean was big enough to operate the string trimmer for trimming the weeds, I was showing him how to use it. And I explained that as the string wore down, you bounce it on the ground to extend more strain. And his response was, "Oh, I saw you doing that. I just thought you were mad." As humans, we tend to try and have an explanation for what we observe. And that's not just limited to children. A number of years ago at the Nelson Atkin Museum, there was an exhibit by an artist and art teacher, Wayne Thiebaud. And one of his pictures was from the San Francisco Bay Area. It was a high-rise, and there was a freeway sort of curving around the base. And the description on the little placard next to it was, "It's an impressionistic rendering within a rectangular framework." Sounded pretty erudite, knowledgeable, appreciative. However, being a simple boy from Missouri, I really didn't understand it. So Thiebaud gave a lecture as part of the exhibition. And in the question and answer session, I asked him, well, what's the meaning of an impressionistic rendering within a rectangular framework? He said he didn't know. He said, out in the Bay Area, it's a little hazy. That's how it looked. So given some factual information, the erudite explanation of the impressionistic rendering within the rectangular framework disappeared from the little placard. One of the things our RE, religious education, does for our kids is they will, on occasion, take them to other church services on a Sunday morning. We realize we live in a world with diversity, and instead of standing at a distance and assigning a reason for the way other people do things, they actually go get some factual information, hopefully build some connections, and if they see something being done better than we do here at All Souls, we can bring it back. Embrace diversity, don't shun it. And so I point this out because this is one thing that the religious education does among many good things. And of course, raising children is a multi-year project. So what I'm asking you to consider is that the religious education is only a small part of the many things this church does very well for our congregation, for our family, our friends, and it leaks over into the larger community. So teaching our children to actually go get facts makes them better human beings, better citizens, potentially better parents, better leaders. So be aware that your offering, your support is supporting this plus many, many other things. So be aware of that, and as you are doing your pledges, stretch a little bit because it's a multi-year project. Oh, by the way, the lights are on, but you've heard that before. The offering will now be given, then judiciously and wisely utilized.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are our grandfather ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. people of mercy and people of love. We are lovers of life and builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Please join me in the dedication of our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
Donna Laura by Maria Mazziati Gillen. Donna Laura, they called my grandmother when they saw her, sitting in the doorway, sewing delicate tablecloths and linens, hours of sewing bent over the cloth, an occupation for a lady, Donna Laura, with her big house falling to ruins around her head. Donna Laura, whose husband left for Argentina when she was 24, left her with 7 children and no money, and her life in that southern Italian village, where the old ladies watched her from their windows so that she could not have taken a breath without everyone knowing. Donna Laura, who each day sucked on the bitter seed of her husband's failure to send money and to remember her long auburn hair. Donna Laura, who relied on the kindness of the priest's housekeeper to provide food for her family. Everyone in the village knew my grandmother's fine needlework could not support 7 children. But everyone pretended not to see the housekeeper carrying food to Donna Laura each day. Even when she was 90, she still lived in that mountain house. Was her heart a bitter raisin? Her anger so deep it could have cut a road through the mountain? I touched the tablecloth. The delicate scroll work, try to reach back to Donna Laura, feel her life shaping itself into laced patterns and scalloped edges from all those years between her young womanhood and old age. Only this cloth remains, old and perfect still, turning her bitterness into art, to teach her granddaughters and great-granddaughters to spin sorrow into gold.
Ancestors Never Sleep by Alice Walker. Ancestors never sleep. and always seem to know what they're doing. How is this possible, I ask myself. Sometimes I am weary enough to expire. What a relief, I think. No more obsessing about this madness, whatever it might be this year or even this century. But the ancestors merely yawn and send me off for a nap. Not only is life not they sniff, it's barely begun for you. There are eternities waiting just beyond the next bad movie you feel you'll be starring in. Go to sleep. Rest your brain. Rest your heart. Rest your eyes, thoughts. We have been with you from the beginning, which didn't exist, and we will be with you until that moment of non-existence swings around again. You are attempting to carry the suffering all around you, but your back is bending. Let us bear it for you, knowing as we do that it is only a difficult turn on a never-ending journey of dissolving and becoming, and dissolving again and becoming once more, forever and ever, on and on. Save despair, our beloved sweet cakes, for a couple of eons later.
Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. It's you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. But when ye come and all the flowers dying, if I am dead, as dead I well may be, you'll come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave there for me, and I shall hear, though soft you tread above me, and all my grave will warmer, sweeter be, for you will bend and tell me that you love me, and I shall sleep in peace until you come to me.
Reverend Heidi Newmark had been a Lutheran pastor in New York City for 30 years, called to minister to a multi-ethnic church community of people targeted by others' hate and devastated by injustice, new immigrants, the children of the deported, homeless, gay, and lesbian youth, young transgender people whose parents refuse even to acknowledge their existence. Her sense of religious calling was so strong that sometimes she felt there just had to be other Lutheran pastors in her very Lutheran family tree going back generations on both sides, though she'd never actually encountered evidence of any. Heidi's father had immigrated from Germany in 1938, arriving in New York with a doctorate in chemical engineering. His very wealthy parents realized that with Germany going to war, their son would likely have a more stable future in the States. So they bought him passage on a ship sailing to New York, where he quickly established himself, working at first for the Army and then for a chemical company. 3 of Heidi's great-grandparents on her mother's side had immigrated from Germany in the 19th century. So, during Heidi's childhood, she was an only child. Her family was big on celebrating their German heritage. Her parents bought her German children's books and toys. They gave German-themed parties that filled the house with the smells of homemade sauerkraut. There was always warm Stollen for Christmas breakfast. And she loved hearing stories about her parents' childhood. And while her mother was very forthcoming, her father much less so. Heidi knew he'd grown up with servants, a cook, a chauffeur, groundskeeper, governess, and that he lived on an estate large enough to have a pond and tennis courts. There were old photos of her father hunting and skiing with his dad, but not many stories. So sometimes Heidi wondered, what had her German grandparents done during the war? Could they have been Nazi collaborators? Or were they like the ordinary Germans who saw the Jews in their communities disappearing and just went about their own business? She'd been told that her grandfather died of a heart attack before she was born, and her grandmother, whom she'd visited a few times in Switzerland, had died when she was 12. Her father died when Heidi was 26, and her mother more recently. And then one Saturday morning, just after midnight, when Heidi's sound asleep, as every minister is at midnight on Saturday, Heidi gets a phone call from her 22-year-old daughter, Anna, who is actually just downstairs and messing around on the computer looking for family names. Mom, did you know that you're Jewish? Did you know that your grandfather died in a concentration camp and that your grandmother was a camp survivor? The evidence is all over Wikipedia. Heidi almost laughs. But does she go back to sleep knowing Sunday morning is fast approaching? She does not. Instead, she stays up for hours Googling. And in her book, Hidden Inheritance, Family Secrets, Memory, and Faith, she writes, I was sucked into a vortex of revelations as one website pulled me into another and then into another, imploding the old verities of my life. And of course, these revelations have been life-changing for Reverend Newmark in the few years she's had to explore them. Going back to the German village where her father grew up, which still, after all these years, after the war, has no more Jews. She's found records. She's connected with long-lost cousins. She's realized that her mother never knew the truth either. She's found that in her father's family, there were several rabbis. And she cringes with regret, remembering a poem she'd written to her father when she was 17, expressing her longing to truly know him. In one adolescently hyperbolic verse, she'd referred to his upbringing as an affluent concentration camp where childhood was not tolerated. Reverend Newmark feels connected in a new way now to the people she served for decades, who in a very different way have also suffered trauma and loss and rejection from their communities. And she realized that her grandparents turned away from their own faith and toward the Lutheran Church, her faith, for the sake of their children and future generations, for her. And she has to question whether that was the right choice. She refuses to judge it. But as a Lutheran pastor, she embodies this tangled, painful legacy, carrying its burdens and its blessings with her forever. Why, she asks, why is it so compelling to find connections between previous generations and ourselves? I think it may be because it makes our own lives feel less random, part of a larger design and pattern. And even if a person cannot relate to past family members for any number of reasons, we belong to another vast community of those who have gone before us. In other words, I think we do well to remember what Vice President Kamala Harris's mother used to tell her. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. We don't spring forth as autonomous beings, responsible for and to only ourselves. What ancestral legacies are we living out? Early in my ministry, I attended a 3-day workshop based on the widely accepted theory that congregations operate like all human systems, starting with families. And family systems theory is used in medicine and psychiatry and psychology, social work, education, and much more. But before we could even talk about congregational life, we got personal. Each of us was required to present our own genogram to the group to better understand ourselves in our own story, which a genogram is a pictorial display of our family relationships, those who raised us, connected biologically or not, going back at least several generations. Not everybody was privileged to have access to this information, of course, about past generations. But if you can, you look at what you know about each relative's personal situation, addictions, marriages, parenthood, wealth, criminal history, health, and then you draw a line from each to another to show what that relationship was. So maybe your uncle had a totally fused relationship with his mother. They were both unable to act independently of the other. Or maybe your father's sister was completely estranged from the whole family, though her son was best friends with one of his cousins. Your grandparents might have been apathetic toward each other, or best friends and loving, or distant and hostile, or close and hostile. Was there abuse or manipulation, generosity, acceptance? And it's when you start to see these relationships among those who came before that you get a sense of where you are in the ongoing story of that particular human system. I think about that in the context of All Souls as one important example. Who were they who came before us, those abolitionists who founded this congregation just after the Civil War, and then all who have kept it going so that we might inherit it? What were their relationships with each other and with the community? Where was their love and courage and conflict, generosity and disappointment? How did we become All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church of 2025? If we could know them, What might the stories of our church forebears have to teach us about who we are as we move forward? In the context of any human system, we're tempted to reject parts of a legacy that we don't know or that we might be ashamed of. Think the fight among Americans about critical race theory. Do we all really need to know the ugly truth about the tragic enslavement of Africans in this great nation? It's painful, and yes, we need to know our own story. Better to see ourselves as part of a much larger story, each of our ancestors progressing toward wholeness as best they could, which was not much in some cases. Sometimes they created great harm along the way, but their story didn't end there, because here we are. It's ours now to take what was passed down to us and to write the next chapters, hoping our story's in a little better shape before we hand it to the next generation. It's a spiritual exercise to develop compassion and understanding for those whose lives directly or indirectly shaped ours, as we hope those who come after will have compassion and understanding about us. When they find out way more than anyone needs to know about our thoughts and opinions and food choices and relationships and questionable senses of humor in the early 21st century, which will all live on in cyberspace long after we're around to explain ourselves. I'm only just now beginning to understand the relationship I had with my father, who died when I was 46. When I became a young adult and he retired, we argued a lot, sometimes bitterly, almost always about issues: Vietnam, Watergate, the military, sexism, racism. I had a lot of unconscious anger about our disconnection. He was the parent I really wanted to get close to. But every time we got together, one or the other of us would casually, yet deliberately, mention something, some butt-pushing topic, and we'd be off. Just at the end of his life, he reached out to me to express his regrets and his love. I responded appropriately, I hope. But I don't know if I was really able to hear it then. I wonder now how safe that felt to him, who had such a hard time being openly affectionate or vulnerable. I knew my father had served in World War II. He hated Japanese people. He said under the layers of civility, they were capable of extreme cruelty. But he sure did love all things German. Having studied German in college and spent time in Germany, he also hated anti-Semitism, at one time threatening to give up his membership in his prestigious tennis club if they persisted in refusing Jewish members. They changed that policy. Ooh, the extreme illogic of all this just infuriated me, but he stuck to it defiantly. And in retaliation, the biggest, most reliably explosive button I knew how to push was to passionately and sincerely condemn the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. More than 200,000 old people, women, children slaughtered. Such pure evil. He'd be livid. I'd be self-righteous. It would never end well. So 10 years ago, out of the blue, I got an email from Rutgers University, my father's alma mater. They wanted permission to publish an interview that their oral history archives department had done with him 2 years before his death, part of a program to help students and scholars benefit from the story of alums who served in World War II. What? I didn't know this interview existed. And the attached PDF file was 120 pages long. And so I read about my father's childhood, his time at Rutgers, his volunteering for the Marine Corps after graduation, and being sent to serve on a ship in the Pacific. As the war went on, he had several near misses, being in the right place at the right time. In response to the interviewer's question, he said he'd never really felt fear then because he'd been pretty lucky. I kept reading. It was 1945 and he was 26. He got orders for a warship in the Philippines. In July, the ship started out to go bombard Hong Kong when the word came, stop, go back to Subic Bay. We didn't know why, he said, but we went back and then we were told, we're going to invade Japan, and this division, along with the minesweepers, is going to lead the task force of 1 million men. His luck had run out. He said he was thinking, it's finally caught up with me. They were all likely to die. 2 days later, the interview goes on. There's all this yelling and screaming and shouting, and somebody said they dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, so we never made the invasion. I'd never heard of an atomic bomb, but it sure sounded good to me. I had been reading for hours. It was after midnight when I read this part, and this truth suddenly slammed through my grogginess as I got it. I am almost certainly alive today, and my brother and my son and my 2 grandchildren, because 200,000 old people, women, and children died in horrific conflagrations 5 years before I was born. And my dad told the interviewer what he'd never told me. And now this is part of my legacy. Is it a burden or a blessing or both? What to make of this story that my father indirectly handed to me, that I now need to make some sense of? Surely it's a way of the world that some die so that others might live, but now it's personal and all mixed up with compassion and forgiveness and horror and regret. As a minister called to justice work, what will be the legacy here that I have to carry forward toward more complex understanding and more awareness towards some sort of healing? I think these will always be unanswered questions. But this new knowledge is a gift from my father's life. It is a blessing and a burden because there's an obligation that comes with understanding how I, right now, right here, am the embodiment of the sum of my ancestors' lives. As we're all the embodiment of our ancestors' lives and all their acts of courage, of fear, of compassion, of ignorance, we own it now, the good and the evil that came before, that got us to this moment. We can't not accept this costly inheritance. How will we carry it forward, knowing that future generations will have to accept whatever we leave to them? Even as, yes, we belong to the past, I believe even more strongly we're accountable to the future. Right now, we're struggling to at least contain this massive dumpster fire. We are not the first to struggle, and this is neither the first nor the most massive dumpster fire. I love these words by poet Sheila Harkin. Your ancestors have passed down their wounds like a growing collection of gems for your inheritance. Don't resent this. They weren't ready to be mined and collected. They weren't ready to be valued. You have the technology now. You know how to dig deep. You know that within every bright, shining wound is a nugget of compassion, a jewel of wisdom they have saved up for you. Now feel deeply blessed to be driven finally into those inner tunnels of self and history. Cashing in this trove will transform the heavy bag of sorrows your ancestor carried into tokens of priceless light. I chose our closing hymn, For All the Saints, as it had special meaning to me. For the first time I sang it, I was with almost 5,000 other Unitarian Universalists from all over the world at my first General Assembly. America was preparing to invade Iraq. There was hope, but also despair and grief permeating that ballroom, and we were gathered to celebrate the annual service of the living tradition, remembering all who came before, who passed the light of the flaming chalice into our safekeeping. Will you join me? From Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery. Go in peace.